Today's Bionicle Inspiration Series episode is all about Makuta, the bad guys of the Bionicle universe. Some of these guys might not actually specifically be Makuta, but we're still just going to explore what it takes to make a Bionicle MOC look more sinister, look more evil, and to just in general be a bad guy, you know? So we're going to look into that sort of elements of that element of character design. Also wanted to give a quick shout out to one of my newest patrons, which is Red X, who joined at the Great Being level, which, oh my god, dude, thank you so much for your generosity. I really do appreciate that. I will get you your personalized MOC sent to you as soon as I can, but I'll have to send you a personal message about all that first. So do check in, and we'll figure that out. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. If you're interested in joining Patreon, there's links in the description below. So let's start the episode. Let's talk about some Makuta MOCs. The first one we've got today is by Glass Laughter, or Glass Slaughter, depending on the way you read that. But I'm going to go with Glass Laughter because it just sounds nice. And this is Altair. So in the description on the email when he submitted this, didn't really have much on it, so I don't actually know if it is a Makuta MOC, but it uses a lot of Makuta-esque elements, and it also uses that, Makuta mask, essentially. It was the Mask of Ultimate Power, if I'm correct. Actually, I don't think I am correct with that. I always forget what that mask is called, but it's a very Makuta-esque mask, isn't it? So it works really well on having some Makuta vibes here, but regardless, this MOC does look more sinister and evil. So let's talk a bit about it. I love the horns coming out of the mask. That's just a great little addition there, and it does a lot for it. Also, this MOC itself is using predominantly a lot of G2 pieces and is far more CCBS focused. There's not really a lot of original kind of G1 elements in this, your original kind of Bionicle pieces here. Which is cool, because if you're someone who mainly collected CCBS stuff, or kind of in their collection only really has a lot of pieces from G2 Bionicle, or later waves of Hero Factory, that sort of thing, this is something you could more easily and effectively recreate, because it's just using some of those pieces, So that's cool. I love especially the use of the Onawa G2 torso there, especially the fact that it has those stickers on the front there. That to me I think is really cool, because you're kind of playing off of the color scheme that's on that piece. This MOC's colors are, the trans purple, bits of silver, kind of gunmetal depending, black, and little highlights of gold. I think that's a pretty good color scheme for this, because your blacks and your gunmetals, they're darker, they're a little bit more sinister, they can give off that slightly evil flair. And then that purple and the gold just gives that little hint of being kind of grand and over the top, and almost sort of just, to some degree, you could argue those colors represent wealth. Could be like a corruption of wealth. So, there's a little bit of symbolism behind those colors there, and always a good idea to have a bit of a think about what the colors might communicate that you put on a MOC, because, as cool as a pink Makuta might be, I don't know if it'll look as sinister, because pink isn't necessarily that kind of evil color. So I think this is a good color choice here, and also really good because you have a lot of those colors readily available for you if you're using those G2 pieces. So that's pretty helpful. That's pretty cool if you wanted to do something similar and you have similar pieces. Got two cool weapons here, this larger hammer and also this super cool kind of flame sword thing. And I thought it was interesting to note that, if you're focusing on the colors on your MOC, sometimes you can want to go with a weapon that is the same color as the rest of the MOC, but sometimes it's also just nice to do like this, have a weapon that has almost nothing to do with the color scheme, but it's a fire sword, so it's got, cool fire powers, and when you whack someone with it, they also get burned, and it's cool. It's got a fun sort of story element to it to some degree. So always think about that too. Can you take a sort of ordinary, boring weapon of some kind, and maybe spice it up in a new way, give it some sort of elemental power, or maybe change the color scheme slightly, because, you don't necessarily have to have the weapon be the same colors as the actual MOC. It could look pretty cool like this and have some sort of story element to it. Also nice to see some capes being used on this MOC as a sort of waistcoat thing here. I think that also helps with that evil flair, kind of giving him this more grand over the top kind of cloak thing, because that's kind of what it is with a cloak, right? A cloak naturally is very large. It takes up a lot of space, which you could argue can be some traits that you might find in certain bad guys. Of course, taking up space doesn't necessarily mean you're an evil person, but you take a look at a lot of villains who naturally have this very large, imposing, overbearing, overpowering presence to them. Having a cape very much helps with that, because you literally have to take up space with it, because they're massive, they drape over the floor, they are naturally quite large, and they take up space. So there's some nice symbolism in that as well. Can you include certain elements on a MOC that just symbolically are, taking up space, or giving off a more evil flair of some kind. Have a focus, have a think about that, because that could really help communicate those evil vibes. And this is a great mock as well, man. Really nice use of all those G2 pieces, like I said. Done a good job. Let us now move on to the next mock here. This is by David Livingston, and it's called Makuta Hunter. So this mock's pretty cool. We were talking before about color scheme. This is a reasonably similar one in terms of bits of kind of gunmetal and black, which the last mock had. But this one also has nice pops of red thrown in as well. And I think that's another great color to be including on some Makuta mocks, or in general just some evil mocks. Maybe you're someone who's like, yeah, I'm not that big on the Bionicle story. I like kind of creating my own storyline, or just I want to build an evil character, but I don't want him to fit in any specific world. I just want to build a fun evil character. Or, doing a color scheme like this, regardless of whether it's a Makuta or not, is going to work, And I think red is a very nice choice there, because red is the color of blood, of passion, of lust, lots of kind of more, sinister things that could work with a more evil character here. So a very fitting color to be including here, and it pops very nicely up against the gunmetal and the black here. So that's pretty cool. Another mock with a cape as well. I love my capes. If we ever get merchandise, if we ever get shirts, that have like the Ben Cossy logo on it, or things that I say often, we're gonna have to have some like cape merchandise. Why not wear a Ben Cossy cape for the low price of $2.99? They're both stylish and remind you of the Bionicle Inspiration series. Maybe. We'll look into it. But I love me my capes, and it works very well here on a Makuta mock, as we discussed before. Also chains. That's a cool idea. Because you're like, why has he got chains on him? It's like if you're walking around and you see someone in handcuffs, you're like, okay, well, he's clearly like someone I can't trust. Why has he got handcuffs on? I doubt you were just playing at home with your kids' handcuffs, and being like, yeah, I just don't have the key, I can't get out of them. I was like, you're clearly someone I can't trust. You're a prisoner, right? You've been arrested and you're running away, So it's that. You're like, why has he got chains on him? Was he imprisoned? Was he does he just think it's a cool aesthetic? I don't know, like it implies a sense of backstory, and it doesn't imply good things, because like, well, you've probably been imprisoned, you've probably done something bad, and people have wanted to restrain you in some fashion, So I like the sort of hint of story with that, but also the sort of implication of bad things with him having chains on him. I quite like that a lot. So it's a fun little addition, There's a bunch of different chain pieces, whether it's those Bionicle chains, which have the actual links that you can kind of put together, and you can get very long or very short chains, or you get the official like system chain pieces, which do come in a variety of different sizes and shapes as well. But they're really good pieces, and it would be a really interesting aesthetic to kind of play around with those chains. And because they are sort of more flexible, you can get some different results with them as well. You can kind of wrap them around things as well. So lots of different possibilities there. That's cool. Something else that works on this mock is the different spikes, the wings, these jagged weapons. There's a lot of rough, gruff, spiky textures on this mock, which immediately implies evil. You see a bad guy and he's got a lot of spikes on him, you're like, oh, don't mess with this dude. Whereas you see a good guy that's got a lot of spikes on him, you're like, why you got spikes on you, man? That's a weird fashion choice, So it works, having the more sort of spiky, evil, jagged textures like that can very much represent the personality, or just, the personality of the mock or the character, or just kind of imply a sense of evil, Darth Maul, horns on his head. There's a whole bunch of different characters, if you look hard enough, in different forms of media out there that have spikes on them, and they're bad guys. Yeah, there might be a couple good guys that have spikes on them. We're not talking about them. But spikes work. Put them on your mock if it's an evil guy. Something else that's cool about this mock, in this email, it included a few other mocks here. This is one of Makuta Hunter's queen and her pet. And then additionally, there are the vampire children, as he called them. And I like this idea of kind of almost designing this like kind of species or family or kind of group of bad guys. They all have that kind of unified color scheme, sort of similar aesthetics to them. I like that a lot. It could be this really fun thing if you're sort of slowly developing your own story. You might be like, yeah, I want this specific like race of bad guys, and they have a similar color scheme. They have this, they have that, and you might be like, hey, I've got a lot of black and red and gunmetal in my collection, so I could actually build a wide variety of different characters in this sort of unified kind of color scheme here. And it's like, yeah, this is my bad guy group. They've all looked like this and do that. It could be cool. And I've done similar things in the past when I've, doing something like that, kind of getting a shared color scheme or a shared concept and building a lot of different characters under that unified banner. It can be really fun to kind of play around with that. Be like, okay, well, what do the henchmen look like? What does the general look like? How is he subtly different? What sort of subtle differences does he have? And, like we see with these vampire children here, the idea of there's kind of two, like, sort of generic soldiers, I guess, or two generic minions that are the exact same build. He's probably got multiple of those specific pieces in his collection, so he's just kind of, built a couple of them, and maybe you have more pieces than our good friend David has here, so you build like a whole massive army with them, and you've got like 5 or 6 or like 20 of them. You got a whole army going, and then you've got the generals who have like slightly more armor, a slightly different look to them, like we see here. And then you've got the leaders. You got their pet as well. There's a lot of different possibilities. You could branch out in other directions as well, like what does it look like to have, the underwater guys, or these are the guys with jetpacks, so they're flying, and this is the vehicles they ride. You can really go to town and really be super creative and develop your own story and all sorts of different stuff with it. I think that's a really fun idea, and especially in these times of isolation, if you're looking for something to do and you're thinking about a story, or maybe you're not even thinking about a story, you just kind of want to play around with different concepts. That could be fun, just finding the different ways that you can build things that are very similar, but find ways of making them different and unique in their own way, which I think this is a clever way of doing it. I really like that. So yeah, that could be something you could play around with. So really nicely done here, good sir. Let's move on to the next mock, which is by Captain Geo. It's called Makuta Hunter. So this one is a little less over the top than the other two we saw. You can see a lot of villains, specifically like Disney villains in movies and stuff. They're very over the top. They're very large, dramatic, big, and bold. But, you can also find villains who are a little bit more reserved, like it's just a guy in a suit, or it's just like, a kid. It could be someone who visually doesn't actually look all that scary, but their personality, the way they behave, the way they act, they are, And now this mock is still quite large and still does have a bit more of an imposing look to him, and certainly a more imposing color scheme with the blacks and silvers there. Certainly a theme of black and silver in this episode. Every mock has been so far in some way. But he's not got like massive wings. He doesn't have a cape. He doesn't have like spikes everywhere. He's got, spikes on his fingers and in a couple other places there, of course. But I like that. It's just a little bit more reserved, a little bit more subtle. But there's still elements that are on this that really do convey that sense of evil, which is great. I reckon that those elements are the color scheme, for example, the claws on the fingers, like I said, but also this mask, giving him this sort of, spiked jaw on the front, and then also flipping that Takanuva mask upside down. The textures on it almost kind of look like teeth. So it kind of looks like he's got this very large sort of toothed mouth that forms his whole head. There's that red thing in the middle there, which could be a tongue, or it could be like an eye that's sort of inside the teeth there, which is creepy and very different, but awesome. So I like that idea a lot. Or maybe if that isn't even a sort of jawed mouth, it could just be that he's wearing this mask that almost sort of resembles teeth in some fashion, or just the way that Takanuva mask, just the general look of it. It almost looks like it's sort of this dripping evil that's sort of just oozing out of something, and I don't know, that slightly unsettling almost, and is just scary to look at, and spiky and evil. It's cool, it's fitting, and it works well for a bad guy. So something like that's pretty cool. Something else is cool about this. Uses the Bionicle frame. So we've talked about the Bionicle frame before. I've actually got an episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Theories all about the Bionicle frame, and another episode just on frames. Basically, the idea is there's instructions online for this Bionicle frame. You can build the frame, and then you armor it up and put whatever you want over the top of it. So it's a really good stimulus for starting a mock, because often starting can be the hardest part. But with the Bionicle frame, you've got basically the frame, and yeah, you just armor it up. So yeah, it's just a good way to start. And obviously, Captain Geo has done that here as well. And it's always interesting. I've seen a fair few big mocks that use the Bionicle frame now, and all of them are so different, and yet they have that same starting point, which is great. So it could be something you might want to attempt or do as well, is just find different ways that you can change up or explore that frame and see how it works for you. It's a good idea. This is a great example of just how cool that is. The Bionicle frame naturally does have those pistons in the middle there of the torso, and you can see them here. I like how he's sort of armored them up specifically. It kind of looks like you can just sort of see underneath the armor where there's sort of those exposed pistons. So it looks nice aesthetically, just sort of the idea of, if this is a mechanical robot, then you can see his sort of robotic details underneath his armor. But also it's working, logistically in terms of he needs to have armor. He needs to have supports to hold him up and that's what pistons act as. So it's always nice when you can get that kind of double thing going there, where something is working technically, but something is also working just aesthetically in terms of looks. So that's cool. So yeah, some nice stuff going on this Makuta Moc. Let's move on to the next one. Just another submitted mock, and it's called Makuna by Raáh Moc. I don't know, that's what the description said there, so I don't fully understand that, but that's what the email said. And this is by Sean Matthews. So I think this thing is sick. I love the head design on this, and I specifically love how he's got this awesome tongue that comes out too, and it's green. That's weird, but cool. I love it. But going back to that mouth, the fact that it is essentially 3 Takanuva masks that form this sort of uniquely shaped mouth that opens up in 3 different places there, that is super cool. That is super unique and awesome. I love it. The eye being this mono eye, just that one little red dot on the middle there. It's so alien and different. It's great. It's really cool. And he's asymmetrical too. He's got this robot arm on one side. That's sick. He's got these digigrade legs, these spikes on his back. This Moc is this really cool organic monster that seems like this sort of weird mesh of different things. You know, the tan almost looks like flesh, so it looks like it's some sort of weird alien creature that's retrofitted itself with armor and mechanical details, and it kind of just looks like this mess of different stuff, but in a really good way. Like, it's like some kind of flesh golem that's taken, you know, organic elements from multiple different beasts and sort of put them all together on itself. And kind of reconstructed itself in some fashion. I think that's really unique and really cool, and an interesting way of doing a Makuta Moc, this sort of more abnormal, unnatural creature of some kind. It's really unique and cool. I think he's done a good job of recreating that there. Some great stuff going on here for sure, and a beautiful blend of very different things that actually work well together. It's cool. It's really cool. It's really unique. On to the next one. This is by Dickwe Brick, and it's called Makuta Hunter. So I've always loved the idea of characters that just look cool on their own, but also have a little minion pet of some kind. And that seems really fitting for a villain, you know? There's the stereotypical villain trope of, you know, spinning around on your chair and you've got the white cat that you're stroking, or you're a bad guy and you've got rabid dogs, you know, Mr. Burns with his Release the Hounds, you know, as it were, and all sorts of other different things, you know? The 3-headed dog in the underworld, the Hades dog there, who's Cerberus. I'm going to get that wrong, and people are going to tell me what it actually is. But, you know, there's a lot of different villains out there that have pets. It's pretty fitting. And, you know, the bad guy's cool, but then when you meet his pet, you're like, oh, no, we got to defeat this guy now? Like, geez, you know. It's cool. It's cool. Or the bad guy and his pet dragon. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities you could do with it. So it's certainly a fun thing that you could design and play around with. And I think this is a great example of it too. I love how he's used those G2 kind of like beast trap pieces to form like this really cool tooth design on this little dog guy here, and his little eyes, his little ears as well. He's kind of cute, but also kind of terrifying. Like, he's got big sharp teeth. I wouldn't want to mess with this guy. Love the little fur on the back there too. He's cute, he's adorable, but he's also pretty menacing, and we wouldn't want to mess with this guy, you know? It's good. It's good. Now for this actual larger Makuta Moc here, I love the color scheme. The translight blue mixed in with all this silver and gunmetal here is great. Those colors go very, very well together. And this awesome waist cape design that he's got on his waist there is also pretty neat. And again, heaps of spikes all over this guy, whether it's his actual physical claws, he's got a lot of those claws too, or his kind of hair design. You know, he's got spikes coming out, but he also seems to have that kind of flowing hair, which is made with spike pieces. You know, so nice to see those spikes being used in lots of different areas on this Moc. It's unique, it's different, it's really cool. Also got that skull mask there from some of the G2 sets. A great mask choice for a Makuta Moc there. That's always something to think about too, you know. A mask choice can, to some degree, make or break a Moc and really communicate a lot, you know. This guy has a skull for a head. To some degree, if you replace that with, you know, just a sort of generic, you know, Toa-looking mask, and you took away those claws, this could be a Toa. But you give him those claws, you give him that skull mask, you immediately know he's evil. So there's a lot in a mask, and there's a lot in those claws as well, of course. But we're talking about masks right now, so I like that. I like that. Always take a look at your mask collection, see what masks you've got. You know, there are a lot of different evil-looking masks from Makuta or other characters across Bionicle and Hero Factory. So check them out. There's definitely a lot of possibilities you could play with, and that would work well for a Makuta, you know. Nicely done. Second last Moc now. This is by VB, and it's called Makuta. There's a lot I really like about this. I love the trans blue that's kind of focused in the torso here. I think it's a really unique design. Just the fact that there's no other kind of trans blue anywhere else on this Moc except for there. It kind of looks like, you know, some sort of internal organs, kind of similar to the kind of green elements on General Grievous in Star Wars to some degree. You know, maybe he is this cyborg character and those are his internal organs kind of flowing out, or maybe it's a sort of weapon. You know, maybe he could shoot a beam out of that or something. It's unique and different, and there's kind of that dark blue claw piece that almost makes it look like it's some sort of heart, like that's a vein or something. It's interesting. It's unique. Again, I don't know specifically what it is, but I like that it is a little bit, there's a bit of ambiguity with it. It's cool. It's cool. I also love the head design on this, kind of giving him this sort of funky looking crown almost. And also just the general kind of shape of that face design looks so evil. Those piercing pink eyes sort of hidden underneath the spikes on his head there. It's just cool. Also his claws being those gold dagger pieces, that's also beautiful. There's a lot to love about this. The nice ribcage design almost, that's sort of clinging to that trans blue element there. Just sort of repeating a few different not lift arms, claws, or those Exoforce robot finger pieces there to kind of give this impression of a skeletal ribcage. That also makes this guy look a little bit more evil, because, you know, there's a lot of depictions of skeletons being evil bad guys in different things in pop culture, so it's a good idea to do that, to kind of take tropes of that, more skeletal-looking fingers, a skeleton-like ribcage of sorts, and to some degree the head design looks a bit like a skull, so little subtle elements of that have been taken, I guess, and expanded and changed in different ways. So that's, yeah, really unique and really different. I also love the idea of this one image here of this Moc holding those two masks. It looks like Kupaka and Tahu's mask there, which is awesome. It kind of gives me two different looks, kind of inspires two different things for me, which I think is communicating a lot about the character. And that's always definitely a big point to be thinking about with Mocs. And you know, just a couple images of the Moc being photographed in some way can easily communicate that. So yeah, seeing him holding these masks, I think of, you know, he's just holding the skulls or the masks of the things that he's just killed, and that's interesting. A little bit dark, of course, but it's interesting. It's a great way of showing how bad this dude is, you know. But it also kind of reminds me of the skull in Hamlet. You know, it's like this guy's about to do this big evil monologue and tell everyone his evil plan, or just say how evil he is and how much he enjoys doing bad things, you know. So I kind of like that too, you know. Two different ways of maybe approaching this image, and two different ways of kind of communicating a certain aspect of his personality, which is always, you know, a cool thing to do. And I've said it before, you know, showing a personality behind a Moc can be very difficult, because it's, you know, it's hard to give pieces of plastic life. But it is possible. It's just not easy. And when a Moc can do it, it really shines. This is a great example of that. Last Moc now. This is by Chubby Butts, or Kelvin Lowe, as he is known as. And this is just simply called Makuta. This is kind of his own version of the G2 Makuta. And I'll read his description here. He said, I expanded upon the concept of a creature with the Toa and extended it to having Makuta having its own shadow beast. The wing blade not only gives him fighting capabilities, but also increases both his offensive and defensive powers. That is sick. I love the idea of doing that. It's like, if the Toa can do it, why the heck can't Makuta do it? And I think he's done it very well here. So you can kind of see it here sort of forming this sort of almost like a back shield, or just sort of wings. Then you can see it again being used as weapons, like he said, sort of forming this sort of, you know, kind of as he punches, he'd also sort of be attacking you with that blade. So sort of this interesting wrist blade of some kind. And then we see the actual beast off as its own beast. It's like a scorpion. It's got kind of pincers at the front and a tail at the back. And these are larger, really cool looking legs using those blade pieces as a funky leg design. I love it. So cool, it kind of almost being this triple changer in some way, having multiple different uses. That's awesome. And I love the symbolism behind that too, of the idea of, you know, the Toa have their toys, and now the Makuta has their toy, but the Makuta's twisted it in more ways. The Toa have it being very kind of organic, very natural. They're a beast, and then the beast chooses to kind of become one with the Toa, and enhance them in some fashion. Whereas the Makuta version of it, you look at the way Kelvin's designed it, it looks very robotic, very artificial, very unnatural almost. It doesn't look like something you would find in nature. The way that the legs are those weapon pieces, and how they have this very unique shape to them, it looks, yeah, artificial and almost wrong. It's like the Makuta have created this creature and kind of forced it into existence, given it sentience. And it's not a living creature. It's been twisted by their will. And then not only does it have one purpose, it has multiple purposes. So it's taking this living creature and twisting it so that it's benefiting them. I really like that idea. So it's taking what the Toa have as this very pure and beautiful thing, and the Makuta are twisting it and making it evil. I really like what that's also saying about the character and their motives and their personality. I think that's really, really cool and really different and not something you see every day. And look, Kelvin might be like, yep, I 100% meant to do that. I didn't mean to do that at all, you know? And I'm just putting what I'm seeing on here. But that, regardless, that's what I'm seeing. Whether or not that was intentional or not is irrelevant. I think that's kind of what's being done here, and I love it. I love it a lot. Something else I love is this really cool stand, this sort of base, this design that is around the Moc in this image here, this system base. So it looks like he's sort of standing in a ruined temple or something. That's pretty cool. It's really cool. It's a fun way of, just being able to kind of show off your Moc on a shelf of some kind, just giving him a bit of context, making him look cool. It's awesome. It's really cool. Again, we've got a sort of more bold and in charge kind of color scheme here with the gold, little bits of trans orange, black, and gunmetal again. Very sinister, very big, very in-your-face, very over-the-top character design. And I love how he's used some Akimu masks as, like, wrist gauntlet things. That's cool. Kind of taking the crown aspect of that Akimu mask and making it look like some kind of clawed weapon. It's cool. It's really cool. I like it a lot. It's a really nice design and a great way of playing with those masks. And this entire Moc is a really great design, actually. So nice work. That's it for some Makuta MOCs today. Had a fair few submitted MOCs on here, and if you want to see some of your own submitted MOCs on the show, you can do so through the email you're currently seeing on your screen. Just send me as many pictures as you want, as little or as much of a description as you want, and I'll get the email, I'll add it to the list, and then one day it'll appear on the show. But remember, your patience is key there, because I've got a lot of submissions to work through, so eventually I'll get there. I promise. Additionally, take a look at the description below. You can actually see the email there. You can just copy and paste it if you want. But also, you can see links to the MOCs that we were featured in the show today. Be sure to check out some of the other stuff those guys have made. Give those guys a follow, all that sort of stuff. Check out what they've done, because they're talented builders and they deserve a bit of love. And also in the links in the description are links to my social media. You can check out some of the other things that I've got going on over there. And unfortunately, of course, with the Copa YouTube changes and all that, you can't comment below, so be sure to reach out on social media. Let me know what you thought about this episode. Always love to hear your thoughts. And hey, if you were inspired and you're going to build something, let me know. I'd love to see what you built. That's it for today's episode, though, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Happy building. Bye for now.